Hello and welcome to this week's episode of #Leadership What's on Your Mind, a podcast to really make you stop and think about your leadership journey by sharing stories and bringing experts in to share their perspectives. So today we are speaking to Steve. How are you doing, Steve? You okay?
I'm good, Stuart. Yeah, thanks for inviting me on.
Thank you for joining me. So Steve, I met Steve. I sat in the audience of one of his speeches at one of the IOD events, the Institute of Directors, and it was absolutely fantastic, and you'll hear more about his perspective. He's written a great book, which I'll put a link in, The Success Code. And the reason why this really tweaked my interest was success is one of my big passions about understanding and seeing success. So Steve, we're going to start with introducing yourself as I press the button for 20 minutes. So for the people who don't know you, just introduce yourself. Who are you?
Okay, I'll try to, Stuart, and I'll try to not use up 20 minutes just on an introduction. I think there's far more important things that we might sort of touch base on. So yeah, you very kindly, it's a wonderful testimonial or introduction you just given me there. Yes, I've sort of, my background, born and raised in Liverpool in the northwest of the UK. One of three brothers in a sort of typical working class family. And my journey throughout the last, particularly in my corporate life, Stuart, has been fundamentally in 2 or 3 sectors. I worked in banking, financial services, then latterly for about a decade or so in private equity, which is a challenge in itself. But then, as you and I have discussed previously, my passion, as much as yours is success and leadership and helping people, you know, unlock their abilities and talents so that they too can find a level of success, both personally and professionally and in life. So literally over the last couple of years, 2.5 now, coming up to 3 years, I've had my own business, which is fundamentally a coaching, a speaking and a consulting business. And, you know, it's been a wonderful journey, an interesting 2020 for obvious reasons, but yeah. I think we're all finding and navigating our path through. So yeah, and it was lovely when you reached out and said, you know, would I join you today for this conversation? Because I think we have the same passion and the same interest.
Yeah, it's great speaking to like-minded people, and 20 minutes flies by when you're doing a good conversation.
So we'll prove that.
Exactly, yeah. So we always start with asking you about your personal leadership. So whether you're aware of it or not, whether it's just you looking back and reflecting, where do you think your leadership started, your leadership journey?
Wow, what a really good question. And thankfully, you know, the answer to your question comes straight to me instantly, because I remember the moment as if it was yesterday. I'm going to take you back nearly 30 years. I know I don't look old enough, Stuart, before you say it. But, when I was 16 years of age, I was very, very fortunate. I went to one of the grammar schools in Liverpool, which were the sort of the schools that, you know, it didn't matter where you came from in terms of background financially, they were considered sort of academically sort of strong. So if you were lucky enough to get to a grammar school, particularly in Liverpool in the 80s, when there were, you know, an awful lot of challenges economically and socio-economically, it should have been a platform to educational success and onwards. But I make no bones about it, I wasted the opportunity. And at 16 years of age, I was handed a brown envelope from my school teachers at the time, which contained my O-level results. Now, previously, 2 years earlier, the school were predicting 12 successful O-level passes, which would have been the passport to A-levels, university, certainly that's what my parents were hoping for. But unfortunately, I received a brown envelope which said I'd failed 10 of the 12 exams and I had 2 O-levels to my name. I didn't even have, Stuart, enough educational qualification to be able to be invited back to resit them. So at 16 years of age, in a city where youth unemployment was approaching 70% at the time, in the mid-80s, my leadership journey began, because without knowing it at the time, I had to take accountability for my decision-making, for my choices. Literally, I'd blamed everybody else for the previous 5 years, but now it was down to me. I had to find a purpose, I had to find a job, I had to find an income. And suddenly I sort of found myself, didn't realize it at the time. I've subsequently realized it in terms of my work and writing the books, etc. But that's when I became a leader. The only person I was leading was myself at the time. But I realized then that, you know, I had to prove people wrong. I had to make my parents proud. I had to sort of take accountability. I was an adult. I was sort of unemployed. I had to earn an income and a living. And I'm pleased to say, as a result of those decisions and that realization and awareness, that the following years and decades have, you know, have largely been a journey of success. But without that realization at that point, 16 years of age, I dread to think what would have happened, to be fair. So
Yeah.
that was the moment. That's when the light came on.
Fab. I love the fact, because I'm really passionate about getting people to realize their control and that self leadership.
Yeah.
And it's a big thing with that realization. Those light bulbs can sometimes, because a lot of people are busy being busy, and whether it can happen at several different times in your life and your journey as well. So tell us a little bit moving forward from that then, about you specifically, leadership, job, roles coming from there.
Of course, yeah. Certainly, I won't go into too much detail, but I'll give people, listeners and viewers a sense of the journey. So, from that boy with 2 O levels at 16 years of age, my first few jobs were office juniors, sort of admin clerks, just getting myself on the employment ladder, bringing an income that, I could prove to mum and dad that I could pay my way in life. And fortuitously, around my 20th birthday, I managed to secure a job in one of the high street banks, just as a junior clerk, but, it was a bank with a pension and a proper job, and I had to wear a suit every day, and literally, I felt like I was on the ladder, and I got a briefcase from M&S at the time. There was nothing in it, but at least I had a briefcase every day. And from then on, Stuart, I'm very proud that ultimately I ended up running within sort of 15 years the NatWest branch network for most of the UK, 2,500 people. And I was only sort of in my late 20s at the time, just approaching 30. I then went on from there to work in telecoms, again, more senior, more executive roles, fundamentally in leadership. And then, as I referenced a few moments ago, just after the financial crisis, 2008, 2009, I decided to leave banking then, as many individuals did. Thankfully, it was through choice, but I went off to work in private equity, which was about identifying businesses where there was leadership shortfalls, leadership problems, fixing those problems, usually in a sales, a commercial capacity. That was my sort of bread and butter. Then we would grow the business, grow the valuation, sell it on, and move on to the next one. So I truly, truly, in those 7 or 8 years, learned about real leadership, as you called it, sort of practical leadership, emotional leadership. And it's fundamentally what I wrote the books on. So, as part of the day job, I must have spoken to, certainly over 12 years, 700-800 people who, no matter which way you and I would define success, whether that was in business, in life, sort of in health, in wealth, in relationships, whatever it was, when I spoke to these people, because my passion then was really sort of taking over, when I asked, what do you do? How do you do it? Why are you a success? What did you do? When did you, 7 or 8 questions consistently, I started to notice a pattern, a sequence. Now, they might have called them different things. They might have had different labels, but effectively, these people who were succeeding, especially in leadership in life or in business, were doing the same things. And we've referenced one of them. They absolutely took accountability. There was no blame. They weren't saying it was their fault. It was down to them as individuals. Their success came from them. And they ultimately held accountability. And then they talked about a purpose and a passion. And, again, that's something you care about and you try and help your clients with in terms of exploring and unlocking that particular thing, because that's the rocket fuel that pushes you onwards in the tough times, in the dark days, which we all have in leadership, in life. We have tough times. And with that clarity of purpose and passion, that's invariably what pushes us through. And, then you go on to systemization. And, I created a code, a sequence, 7 steps that the most successful people on the planet, as far as I was aware, were doing day in, day out, that the vast majority of us just weren't and don't. Yeah. And then when I look back and thought about my own career, from leaving school at 16 to, ultimately selling businesses for hundreds, if not millions of pounds, literally the last business I sort of finished was sold for $1 billion. Now, this is a guy from Liverpool with 2 O levels selling a business for $1 billion. I hasten to add, the $1 billion didn't come to me. But anyway, I was doing the same thing, Stuart. I just didn't realize it. So I mentioned it before. I took accountability at 16 and said, this is down to me. I had a purpose and a passion, which was to make mum and dad proud again and get on the employment ladder and get a job and have an income and have a nice life. I built systems to make that happen. I overcame limiting beliefs that you can't do this. This can't happen for you. You won't be able to achieve this. They'll never give you that job. I overcame those limiting beliefs. And it's hard work, and they still exist in my mind today, but I know how to deal with them. And then I talk about habit and discipline, So effectively, and I've just summarized my life, 4 decades of my life there in 2.5 minutes or so, but
Yeah.
that's what I care about. That's what I try and help clients with. That's what I'm passionate about, trying to help people realize this stuff is not difficult. In fact, it's easy when you break it down, but it's incredibly easy not to, because life and work and social media and so many things are competing for our thoughts and our time, that only the most successful seem to be able to sort of cut through that noise and remind themselves of the principles I've just referenced.
Yeah,
That makes sense.
yeah, definitely. I'm just going to mention something we were talking about just before we jumped on as well, that my view of people being busy, and that lack of focus, direction, accountability is a massive thing there as well.
Absolutely.
As you were just sharing your story then, I just wanted to know your thought process on this, especially with you being an author as well. Talk about your journey regards to just going and experiencing and actually learning, because one of my big things is about, we've got to take leadership off the page and apply it. Yes, learn, develop, but actually have a authenticity. And that information's great,
Yeah,
but you can read all the leadership books you want and not get any further in your leadership journey. So what are
absolutely.
your thoughts on that?
Oh yeah, you sort of, it's music to my heart, the way you sort of believe in that and you talk about that, because I've realized and I've seen it evidentially. I think there are two sort of leadership hats that we wear in life. Well, let's talk about business leadership. That's, practically where most people associate leadership to exist. Now there's technical leadership, which is the stuff you can learn, Stuart. You can go on a workshop to learn how to coach. You can go on an online program and learn how to manage change. You can read books, as you've referenced, on all aspects of what I call technical leadership. The stuff that you see, the stuff that you can touch, and the stuff that you can learn. Now, the other side, the bit where you truly learn, where you have to apply it, where the spotlight is often put on us in these parts of our career, our journey, is what I call emotional leadership. That's the stuff inside, Stuart. That's the stuff sort of that's, you can't see it. It's not visible. It's what your heart says. It's what your mind says. It's what your body says. It's what your gut says. That to me is emotional leadership. And that's the stuff that can only develop and grow as you become more experienced, as you put yourself in different situations. And that type of leadership is often tested most when, upon the expression, when the brown stuff hits the fan. Because we can all be wonderfully exciting, inspiring leaders on a page, in a book, in our minds. And most people will agree with us and say, yeah, that's possible. But really, when the tough times hit, and there have been many in my career, when the sales numbers were not good enough, when we didn't execute the change program well enough, when the businesses nearly folded, in the banking crisis of 2008, 2009, I don't care how technically capable I was, that didn't matter a jot. What most mattered was my emotional leadership. Would I stand by my people? Would I fight for them? Would they believe passionately that I was sort of thinking of their interests rather than my self-interests at all times? And I know I sleep at night soundly, that's exactly what I did. Often, sometimes at my own expense, but anyway, that's irrelevant. So I passionately believe, Stuart, in two forms of leadership. They are the same thing, because it's the same leader, it's the same person. But there's the technical stuff you can learn, and there's the emotional stuff that has to grow and develop through experience, through situations, through scenarios. And you get half a second at times in the tough times to think about me, as long as I'm all right, Jack, or no, I'm a leader who cares about my people. You don't often get a lot of time to think about it. It's in the moment, the spotlight's put on you. And if you can be a leader that operates the way I've just suggested, then people will follow you through brick walls. People will achieve and do incredible things on your behalf. And the reason why is because they know that you'll do exactly the same for them in the tough times.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, great. And like you say, like-minded people coming together to talk about like-minded stuff. It's great, and I love it. So one success, and this is why it really resonates with me, because I've got a sports background. I love looking across into sport and high performance.
Yeah.
And again, when we look at sport, it's very much high performance and success linked. So what are your kind of like, I use it as a springboard, because like you can learn and develop, and then it's only when you understand and see success, because we see success, but we don't understand it all the time. We don't see what's behind success. So tell us a little bit about your concepts about success,
Yeah.
about how we need to learn from it, develop it, and what we can grow from it.
Okay. Okay. So I've, as you know, you very kindly referenced it. I've actually written 2 books on the subject of success, because I've ultimately learned that success to me, and success to the vast majority, and certainly to those people that I referenced before, the 750, 800 people that I've been very fortunate enough to interview over the years, who are what you and I would call successful. In my opinion, it's never a moment in time. Success to me is the journey. Success to me is the experience, the growth, the journey. I'll use that word again, from where you are to where you want to be. And that is success. That is, you know, that feeling of excitement, of growth, of development, of progress, of advancement towards a point, or towards a moment, or towards a feeling, or towards an achievement. But getting to the achievement is not, to me, what most people would call the success. Oh, I've got £1 million in my bank account, I'm a success. Well, if you want to measure it that way, okay, if it works for you, that's great. But I think when you take a moment to reflect, it's the journey and what you did and the challenges you overcome and the sort of obstacles that you got round to get the £1 million in your bank account. That's real success. That's the personal growth, the personal development. And that's the thing I work mostly on in terms of clients and group clients, corporate clients, etc., is trying to teach particularly leadership teams. Success is not hitting the sales target that week. Success is the growth, the development, the coaching, the enablement that you gave to your people and your teams to have delivered it. That's just an indicator. That's just a moment in time that says we were on good form. But that won't guarantee success tomorrow. It's the journey that you are on, and you keep going on and keep growing and keep developing, which is why the success code itself is an iterative process. It's 7 stages, but you never complete it, because it's a continuous journey to get better and better, or more successful or more successful. So that's, you know, I'm very clear on success as a concept, Stuart, that, you know, to me, it's not the car on the drive or the size of the house or the bank balance or the watch or the holiday destination. It's the journey and the experience and the growth and the development that you go through to be able to achieve those things.
Yeah, that's, and again, as you finished up there, I was just thinking about the fact of people living in the moment and people actually looking those 10 steps ahead and not realizing it's about the journey and not the destination, and having that kind of awareness of control,
you're right,
as well.
We feel most successful in life when we're advancing towards something that we aspire to have or be or achieve or sort of obtain. And that journey is when we feel successful. And we feel unsuccessful in life when we're consciously aware that we're moving away from the goal, the aspiration, the point that we're talking about. And I feel that I've felt that in my whole life, that at times when people have labeled me, or I've even labeled myself as unsuccessful, I know exactly when it was. It was at those points in my life when I wasn't advancing towards ultimately what I wanted to be. Yeah. When I got myself back on that path and I felt I was moving forward, even tiny baby steps toward it, that's when you feel successful. Yeah. That's when you feel in your heart and your soul and your mind, I am successful. I'm going to be successful in whatever way people want to label and define this success word. Yeah. To me, it's a journey rather than a moment.
Yeah, fantastic. Also, so we've only got 1.5 minutes left.
No,
I just want you to add a little bit of value and thought process to our audience. And I'm going to test you a little bit. So everybody who listens to this podcast is on different levels of their leadership journey, different times in their leadership journey. With you, with your experience, and as I almost talk about it as a mountain, that when you're at the bottom, you've got so many different things you can do. The higher up the triangle you get, there's less things, but there's obviously they're really important things, but it's leading to high performance.
Yep.
So for those people who have been on their leadership journey for a long time, what are some of the things that you get them to challenge, to think about what they can do? Because a lot of people can just, in mountaineering terms, sit down and just, well, this is me.
Yes.
What do you do to make them think and develop even further?
Well, I mentioned it before, and again, I make no apologies for referencing it. It's the purpose word or the passion. I'm okay with both labels really, but to me, no matter whether you've climbed a mountain several times, there's always another mountain to go. Or as you very sort of eloquently said, if you're new on the leadership journey and you're looking up at these huge mountains thinking, where do I go? Where do I start? How do I even begin to climb this huge, significant obstacle that's called a mountain? The same thing applies to me. You've got to have a real purpose about why and what you're going to get from climbing the mountain. And when the people or the Sherpas or whomever look to you to say, what are we doing? Why are we doing this? What are you taking us over this cliff for? It's not about the target or the objective. You've got to always remind them of the real purpose behind it. And, that's a whole different conversation about purpose.
Yeah, brilliant. Excellent. We might have to get you back on again, Steve.
Well, it's been lovely speaking to you, Stuart, so I don't mind, diaries permitting.
Yeah, so that's 20 minutes. So thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.
I'll show you guys again. So there'll be a link below for the book, and you can reach out and find out more about Steve. If you like the episode, please make sure you hit us a review, put the 5 stars and the comment if you're watching us on your podcast provider, Spotify or any of the, we're on about 9 different ones now. And then if you're watching us on our YouTube channel, make sure you put some comments in below, let us know what you got from this episode, and make sure you hit the link and join us in the Leadership Lounge. So see, that just leaves me to say thank you so much again for your time. And I'll see everybody next week. Take care.
Bye-bye.